Hi, it's Jason again from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. When giving advice on how to do propagation successfully, one of the first things I always mention is the importance of keeping a sharp and clean set of pruners. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you what that means, how to sharpen them up, what to lubricate them with, what to clean them with so they're free of disease and virus passing between your plants. And if you stick around towards the end of the video, I might do one additional step, is I might make a comparison then between an expensive set of pruners like this and the cheap set that you'd find in your local hardware store or mass merchant store. So stick around. I'm just going to adjust the camera to look down so you can see a little better, and I'll take you through it all. Okay, your basic pruners are going to look like this. Bypass pruners. If you're making cuttings, you want the cleanest cut possible. I won't go into all the different types of pruners there are, but this is a bypass style. And if you got the other style, the anvil style, what it would do is it would tend to crush the plant between these two blades here. So for the cleanest cut, you want to go for a bypass style. In using these, one of the main risks that you incur is that you could spread diseases between your different plants. So if you've got bacterial, fungal, viral infections in your plants, you take cuttings of one, you stick them, and then you go to the next plant and take cuttings of those, you could tend to pass those viruses or diseases between the different plants. So one thing you'll have to do, more often than any other piece of maintenance, is you'll have to disinfect. And you spray them down real good. This is a quaternary disinfectant. It takes about 30 seconds to kill 99 point something percent plus of all of the viral, bacterial, fungal diseases that could be on your plants. I just buy this one at the local horticulture store. It's called Virkon, but a quaternary disinfectant of any sort will do. Also, a lot of people use a 10% bleach solution, which I think, again, you would spray it and you'd use it in a field. Now, the one thing that is true, both of the quaternary disinfectant and especially of the bleach, is that having used it on your tools, if you just then put it away and left it for a week, and you come back, it might not even open. It's going to be like rusted shut. That's because the water in the quaternary disinfectant, or again the water and the bleach is a bit of a corrosive. So it's going to tend to oxidize your blades, and you'll end up with problems with your blades. So after you're done with your day of pruning, or even sometimes in between, depending on how it's working for you, you're going to want to have to lubricate your blades. Also, you sharpen as necessary. So the most common thing you'll have to do is disinfect, but you'll also have to lubricate and sharpen as necessary. So in terms of lubricants, this is another area where I'm not going to say that which particular product you use matters. A lot of people just reuse regular motor oil or household oil. 3-in-1 oil is fine. What I use, just for convenience of application and for another reason I'll mention in a second, is I use WD-40. Now WD-40 is a penetrating lubricant, and it also is a water displacement. Now I mentioned a minute ago that it's the water in the disinfectant, or again, water combined with bleach. Also, there's lots of liquid or water plant residues that are getting onto your tools as you use them. So if the water gets into the area there, the pivot of your pruners, or if it gets into the spring, if that water stays there, that's what's going to tend to corrode. So by using WD-40, getting it into those spots there, and onto the spring as well, but again, all over the blades, you can be generous with this. This is after a disinfecting step, by the way. Then you wipe that off, and what it's going to tend to do is it's going to displace that water that's gotten into your tool and lubricate and act as a penetrating lubricant at the same time. Other things you can use. I've got white lithium grease here. That's another one that I've used on occasion. I've used just regular silicone spray, and that's fine too. I mean, basically anything you have on hand isn't going to harm the tool, but I found just for convenience of use that WD-40 is the best. So the next thing I'm going to show you about these tools is a little bit of how they work. And excuse me while I mug up real close to the camera here and see if I can get myself into focus. So this blade here is not a blade. It's completely blunt on the backside here. It just holds the plant in place while this blade closes upon it. So this here is the cutting blade. So that's the one you have to sharpen. Any amount of sharpening on this blade would be wasted. So I'm going to show you how to do the sharpening here. Remember, I mentioned it was, this one here. The one that, I guess if you called this one concave and this one convex, you'd be sharpening the outer side of the convex blade. So you can see, if you can here, I'm going to see if I can get an angle that works here. As they close, one slides over against the other, and it's really the space between them that causes problems. So if you were to sharpen now this side of the blade, you would tend to increase the space between these two blades. Whereas if you sharpen this side of the blade, that just sharpens the edge. Now, angle. It's going to be a hard one to explain, but basically I'm just going to say it's not a 45-degree angle, but more like a half of a 45-degree angle or a 22-degree angle. So you're actually putting quite a narrow angle on this to make it quite sharp. Now, which sharpener you use? This one here, I couldn't even tell you where I got it from. I think it probably came from my dad at one point or another. It's helpful because it's not a big block of sharpening stone. So you want something that's narrow like this, that you can actually get it into this area between the two blades. Like if you had a big sharp block here, you're trying to force it in between this blade and this, you'd have a bit of a problem doing that. It's just less helpful. What I will do maybe is I'll put below the video a link to Amazon and just show you one that would be appropriate, although there may be many that are appropriate for that purpose. So again, just a good working over of the blade from end to end. And now you have a sharp, lubricated blade ready for use the next time. Now, to know that it's sharp, I'm going to bring in a piece of, this is Buddleia here. And if I take a cut now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see how clean that cut is, but that's exactly what you want when you're propagating. A good, clean cut with no bits of skin on the outside or any crushing. This actually is kind of a hollow stem. So if we can cut that cleanly, you have a really good chance of making that cut. Also, just to demonstrate, I've got some potting tags here. And if you sharpened it right, you should just make a nice, easy cut of that. Nice and flat, nice and straight. Shouldn't bend over it or anything else. So the next thing I wanted to show you here, I've got a couple of cheap blades here. And they both say China on them, one place or another. So they're a lot cheaper than these Felco pruners, the red handle ones that I showed you first. And on this one at least, I can feel it. I mean, it's lighter. The actual width of the handles is narrower, and I can see on it that there's, on the anvil portion here, there's actually a big split between one layer of metal and another. So it's definitely not as high quality. There's a bit of crunchiness in the spring there. What I'm going to try to do, because I haven't used these ones in a while, is I'm just going to see if putting a little bit of WD-40 on there improves the feel of the blade substantially. And you know, it does. It does. So, you know, what I will do with these ones here, I want to make the comparison between that Felco and this cheap Chinese blade here. But to make a fair comparison, I'm going to have to sharpen this one up. So bear with me for just a second. Boy, it's taken some work to sharpen these up. There's definitely some corrosion on there. Haven't used these in ages. What this stone does is it pulls off just a small amount of metal as it's sharpening. This may have to be the part where I do a tiny bit of time lapse just to get to the destination faster. Okay, having done all that, maybe I will take a test cut here. And I still have the stem here, so I'm going to take a cut. And even after the sharpening, I'm having a harder time making the cut, and it seems to crush the stem an awful lot more. When I look down the blade here, I think the reason for that isn't because I skimped on the sharpening, but it's actually because there's a little bit of space between the cutting blade and the holding blade, and it's making the plant sort of twist as I make the cut. Still passable in a certain way. If you were just doing landscape pruning, that might do the job, but for propagation I would really advise you to use something a little nicer. This one here just came out of the package, and this is like a $7 blade that I got from a hardware store. I noticed as I looked at it in the store, it actually has the same width of handle, and it's obviously a lot newer. So I thought I'd give it a shot and see how this one works. It's already sharp, but just touching it up here. Let's see how that one does. Yeah, actually pretty clean right out of the box. When I look at this, I can see already, again, that little bit of space developing between the two metal layers of the flat edge. The movement is quite good. It feels quite firm in the hand. The width is a lot more like the Felco, so it feels more comfortable. I don't know how these will hold up, but a nice clean cut right now. In fact, maybe what I'll try is one other quick thing here. This here's just a fig plant here. And you know, it makes a nice clean cut in the leaf as well. Go back to the Felcos here, and maybe a touch cleaner. But I guess my thought on the cheap blades is, I mean, you know, maybe I'll put it this way: you don't actually end up spending a lot of money on pruners over the course of your time in the garden. You might buy one of these and it cost you, you know, $75 or $100 for a nice pair of pruners, and it's going to last you many, many years. You may have to replace the spring in it. You may have to replace this blade once or twice, but overall, you don't ever spend a ton of money. However, if you are a bit short of cash and you wanted to get one of these from, well, I guess this would just be from a mass merchant store, won't say the name right now, and if you sharpen it faithfully and you lubricate it and disinfect it, you may get some decent use out of it. I think this one here is so cheaply made, it may be beyond help. So with the Chinese blades, I guess consistency may be lacking, and if you have the money for it, I'd recommend you go ahead and get something higher quality like the Felco. All right, that's all I had to say on this video. If you have any questions, please leave them below.